advice and policy. See, like I said, we haven't got any mandate. We're not looking for personal benefits here. We're looking at the benefits for the country. Because irrespective of which government's in place, which government's today, which government's going to be tomorrow, we're still going to be here. We're the ones that are going to have to suffer and face IMF in the long run. So they're building this debt for us and our future generations to come, which is unacceptable.
Absolutely, spot on. Now, Dr. Remedies, what should be done? I mean, over here, there's another story, IMF. They're going to be another 700 billion rupees tax in the next fiscal year. When you talk about the FPR reforms, the reality is right in front of you. So many other areas. And the local businessman is so fed up, sir, honestly speaking, that why would we end up having the foreign investor in Pakistan, sir? You know the details, you know the statistics. Ji, Dr. Saab.
Ji, Faisal, I mean, I don't think it's the way it is being described that we are not doing anything. I think every day 99% of the time of the Prime Minister is spent on economic reforms across the various value chains, right from construction to exports to agriculture to manufacturing services. The issue is that we have an entrenched kind of, I wouldn't call it a mafia, but the system is very entrenched. So let's take agriculture. Agriculture, we have at 1/3 of the global yields, even less than that. And what is needed? We need the seed revolution. Now, the seed revolution, you can import it and pay for it, or your system, your own knowledge system has to create it. So our knowledge system is fossilized. We have agriculture universities who do no research. We have agriculture research institutes who have never produced new seed. The scientists, there are thousands and thousands of scientists working over there, and they claim that they make all this seed, but the farmer doesn't get it. So the entire value chain, from the knowledge base to the extension, agriculture extension, to farm support system, to water management, to logistics from the farm to the markets, and from domestic production into exports, all the system is jammed up. It is fossilized. We have not invested in it. And to expect that now with the flick of your pen you can change it, of course it will take time. Everything is known. I mean, you know what has to be done. It is a time-consuming process. If you can't get the seed in, it's like garbage in, garbage out. And that's what we see in the agriculture sector. We have some of the best agriculture land, we have water, we have 60% of your population is working on agriculture, but our output, our competitiveness is zero. And to change all of that, you need to ram through lots of things. And as you know, the political environment in the country, as Bande was saying, it's not conducive to change, because there are going to be winners in this, and lots of us are going to be winners. A few of us are going to be the losers. The losers are the cartels. The losers are those who have kind of a hold on the supply chains. The losers are the bureaucracy who create the special dispensation for various people and groups. And in that sense, if we deregulate everything, the public sector corporations will have to go, because they will not be able to compete with the
exactly, we need to have the private sector involved. I mean, at the end of the day, there has to be some sort of a private-public, a partnership. Plus, I think the private sector could be the real catalyst for the change. Last comment from you, Zia Bande Saab.
Getting the kind of communications to the people, so them to be participating in this reform agenda. Because it is at this time, I think, I have seen many governments, Prime Minister level, at this point in time, there is intense activity on the reform side, and what we have seen in the construction area, it has been deregulated substantially, and the results are coming out to be very positive.
All right.
Our cities have...
All right, Banisa, please.
Okay. I think so. It is already been, to say the PTI government is already aware of the problem. And I will only use one word which PTI has used in its flagship program of SRs, which is state capture. Pakistan is basically a victim of this state capture, and it is not unusual. It has been done in everywhere in the country. Other developing countries also are the victim of it. And as Salman Saab had said that he is not using the word mafia, but the government itself is using, and they have used for the sugar mafia, wheat mafia, the petroleum mafia, and so many other things. Cartels. So the government is well aware of the factor, and I understand we have to give the government the space also to work around. It's not easy. It's not for PTI or PPP or PMLN. All these cartels and mafias, they basically integrated in the system very well. So what is important for us, if you want to, I will just repeat again, the main remedy is to decentralize things. Irrespective of the space and capacity which is available, decentralize things, make things more competitive at the lower level. Why don't Yasser basically stand for this mayor election of Islamabad? He's the businessman, he knows more about the problems of Islamabad than anybody else. They should be leading, these business community should be leading their cities. Then the regeneration will be much better than the so-called commissioners which are leading it. If chambers are leading the cities and their governance. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bani Saab. It was a pleasure having you, Salman Saab. And Yas Saab, thank you so much for your presence as well. And that's all we have for this up. I'll see you again, inshallah, tomorrow at 8. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.
My name is Kuninori Matsuda. I'm Japan's ambassador to Pakistan. Please watch me in an interview with Omar on this Saturday on PTV World.
Your living is determined not so much by what life brings to you as by the attitude you bring to life, not so much by what happens to you.
Welcome to PTV World News. With the latest news and updates, I'm Sana Makfool, and these are the headlines of the hour. Pakistan will support any solution agreed upon by the Afghan parties about the future of their country, says Prime Minister Imran Khan in his meeting with the head of Afghan Masood Foundation, Ahmed Wali Masood. Prime Minister Imran Khan says the country's economic indicators are on a positive trajectory despite many challenges, including that of COVID-19. Missing climbers including Pakistan's Muhammad Ali Sadpara, Iceland's John Snorri and Chile's Juan Pablo officially declared dead in a news conference attended by the families of the climbers in Skardu. President Arif Alvi extended condolences to Ali Sadpara's family and to the families and people of Iceland and Chile. The President prays for the departed souls to rest in peace. Chinese ambassador to Pakistan Non Rong meets the Army Chief, General Qamar Javed Bajwa. Matters of mutual interest, including regional security, discussed in the meeting. Pakistan and Egypt agree to further strengthen trade and economic relations between the two countries through enhanced cooperation in diverse fields. Pakistan will begin the second phase of COVID-19 vaccination for people above 65 years of age from the next month, says Prime Minister's Special Assistant on Health, Dr. Faisal Sultan. Pakistan urges India to allow international human rights organizations and world media to visit Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir to assess the situation on ground. Scores of farmers protesting against new and contentious farm laws gathered on railway tracks across India and blocked routes. Railway officials stopped most trains as a precautionary measure at the stations. The start of Pakistan Super League 6 is eagerly awaited as the cricket spectacle is only 2 days away. The sparkling PSL will begin on Saturday with a dazzling ceremony at the National Stadium in Karachi. PTV Sports will telecast the event live. Those were the headlines. For details and live streaming, log on to our website world.btv.com.pk. You can also log on to our Facebook page with the name BTV World and follow us on Twitter @WorldBTV. It's goodbye for now. Take care.
sarangi is a bowed, short-necked string instrument from subcontinent, which is used in Pakistani classical music. Its flexible tunability and its ability to produce a large play of tonal color and emotional nuance makes it unique. Carved from a single block of wood, the sarangi has a box-like shape with 3 hollow chambers called stomach, chest and brain. It's usually around 2 feet long and around 6 inches wide. It has 3 melody strings and 11 to 37 sympathetically vibrating metal strings.
Young girls in the beautiful valley of Kashmir sing and dance to the soft and lyrical music. Please enjoy the Kashmiri dance.
Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm farrukh Pitafi. Today we are going to go beyond Pakistan's politics and we are going to talk about another regional phenomenon, that is India. Remember, the country that was once known as the largest democracy in the world seems to be going through some kind of crisis of its own. And we have seen recently that farmer protests were going on, and then all of a sudden something very strange started happening. International celebrities started tweeting about it, and when international celebrities did, Indian government actually came into action, and all of a sudden there was a Masonic kind of attitude that we saw quite visible on television. Somehow a country in which in one state a lawyer and his wife were killed, hacked to death on record, in front of camera, in that country, and similarly in a country where people are dying because of poverty, all of a sudden everything else didn't matter. There was one word that did, and it was toolkit. What exactly is toolkit? That is also important. We will be actually showing you some very interesting things that are going on, but you can look at these cartoons. Above you can see Roti Kapra Makan, the demand for that. Common people are demanding that. And this cartoonist actually shows that Modi ji is only talking about toolkit. I don't know about the kit part,
but tool is a word that keeps on coming to the mind. But here's another very interesting thing. Why are toolkits important? Why is it that all of a sudden international media matters more to Narendra Modi and his organization than anybody else? We show you a very interesting clip right now. In this clip, you can see that there is a BJP's own toolkit that actually provides instructions to the Twitter handles of all its lawmakers and important people. And here you can see that very small changes are being done by some people who wanted to expose this entire thing. And in doing so, amazingly, they change the numbers and they start injecting words that actually show you that Narendra Modi is nothing but a failure. And then, look, lo and behold, you can see their tweets. The ministers are saying that the quality of the democracy has gone down, and umpteen other things. Eventually, they caught on and they deleted these tweets, but this is what has been happening. Why is it that India worries so much about its image and so little about anything else? There's one clip that also shows you what exactly is going on. This is from the Indian Parliament, a lawmaker from a Bengal-based, political party speaking. Listen to it.
2018, translation in English, said in Hindi, I got the video. 2018, and I'm saying in English, quote, we are capable of delivering any message we want to the public, whether sweet or sour, true or fake. We can do this because we have 32 lakh people in our WhatsApp groups. Akhilesh Yadav slapped Mulayam ji. Ye to fake news hai, no problem. Unquote. Who said this? This is no IT troll. I was hoping India. Because I am with Mamtaji's party. What we say, eye to eye, stick to your face. Amit Shah ji said this at a rally in Rajasthan. Fake news. Who do you blame for fake news? This IT cell or...
So you listen to a lawmaker who is pointing out that India's Home Minister is actually very proudly bragging about fake news. And one more clip that you have to watch before I introduce the participants, and I'm going to do that in a bit. Let me remind you, it is important that in India right now, it seems that all institutions are collapsing under the pressure of its government, which is actually RSS government, and that actually ensures that there are no nuances in the society. I think one video that we have to show you is getting ready. The moment it does, I will be told and I will show it to you. That actually explains what is going on in India. Although the video clip was created, the video was created for Trumpian world, but it also captures the essence of what is going on in India. I am told that perhaps that video is ready. Watch it first, and then we are going to talk about anything else.
Those who thrive in this world are those who understand that it's about spectacle and not about substance. Fascism is all about symbol and sensation and spectacle, and so by creating a political world of spectacle as opposed to a world of substance, you actually create outlets and openings for fascism which weren't there before. And the rise of the far right across the world, to some extent, is the result of the complete degradation of political journalism. Political journalism should be about the issues that affect our lives, what the policies are, what the ideas are. Every year these get less and less of a look-in favour of the personalities, and the more outrageous those personalities, the more coverage they get because they contribute to the spectacle. Good reporting requires real depth. It requires knowledge, it requires research, it requires time, it requires money. Sure, there are still some great journalists, but they work at the margins. Whereas the journalists whose work is central are the ones who do the least actual journalism. They're the ones who mouth pre-existing positions. In the extreme case, they're the newsreaders who read somebody else's script. Look at who gets interviewed in the newspapers. By far and away, the biggest category of people who get interviewed is actors. There's loads of professions in the world, loads of people doing really interesting and fascinating things, and yet it's actors. And of course what the actor represents is spectacle. The actor is there to present spectacle, because spectacle is the central feature of the media and substance is peripheral. Why have we become obsessed by particular figures and particular personalities? Could it be because that's the only thing of politics we ever see? Actors on a stage put in the spotlight rather than the people that they affect, rather than the issues, the policies, the real world impacts. It's not about the powers that shape the world. It's not about institutional power, because to deal with that, not only do you have to do some real journalism, but you also have to challenge and confront power.
Imagine a country of 1.3 billion people. There you are supposed to have democracy, where institutions work, and all of a sudden, this entire country is reduced to a spectacle. We are going to talk about that. Farmers' movement is going on. We know that there is a lot that goes on in India that is hardly ever reported, and it is good. But right now, the spectacle is beating the substance. We are going to talk about all these matters. In order to help us understand these issues, we are joined by Dr. Saif Malik Saab, who is Director, India Study Center, Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. He, by the way, is also my teacher, and it will be a mess if I don't bring it up, although he looks younger than I do. With us also is Ambassador Asad Tutani Saab, who is a career diplomat and a petrol effects writer. Thank you very much, Ambassador Saab, for being part of the program. Then we are also joined by Syed Mohammad Ali Saab, who is adjunct professor at Georgetown University. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program as well. Let me start with you, Dr. Saif Malik Saab. What exactly is happening in India? And why is it that India, that used to have many nuances, I mean, it is a federation, it has many layers of governance and quality of governance. All of a sudden, it seems that it has got only one birth, and it is flat. What exactly is happening?
Thank you, Farrukh. It was a very serious question to me. If we look at the anthology of Indian secularism and democracy, the norms which were set at the outset after the independence of this country, things with the passage of time kept on decay, especially when I will be focusing on the present regime. Whether Modi, whether he was a chief minister of Gujarat, whether he was when he became the prime minister, but the manifesto which he was carrying, it was one-point agenda that was based on the ideology of Hindutva, how to make an Akhand Bharat, Mahabharat, and how to project its might in the region. That has really challenged so many things, not only on the internal front, but the external as well. On the internal front, if you look at there are so many fault lines are there. Intolerance, no more flexibility to those the voices of conscience, voices of dissent. So what we can see that if we look at the internal front, they are not going to tolerate the minorities. By the way, India has declared 6 national minorities, notably Muslims, which are 180 million, about 13.4, then followed by Christian, they are almost 2.3, then the Sikhs 1.7. And all are in a state of anxiety, chaos, disturbance, and mess. So the norms with the democracy, I thought them, those are no more. So what all is being done with this is just because of one thing, that They are going to follow one-point agenda.
Right.
Not to call
And that is to
anyone.
modernize the country and
Yes.
try to make it, restructure it after itself.
Yes.
Right. Let me also bring in Ambassador Dotani. Ambassador Dotani, thank you very much, sir, for your time. Let me ask you, where do you think, if I talk about as an India watcher, the distress caused by watching India right now, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest, where do you stand there? And how do you see what is happening in India right now?
Well, it's a difficult question. The reason is that India is still a civil government, democracy, even if you can call it that, they have the fascist tendencies. This has happened. I think Hitler could also say that he was democratically elected leader. But as you have rightly pointed out, and Dr. Saif alluded to that, the Hindutva agenda, unfortunately, is based on majoritarianism. So the majoritarian rule they want to, but unfortunately they want to impose on a minority which is already, suppressed. If you look at the indicators in India, Muslim share, although they make almost 14%, 15% of the population with almost 200 million Muslims,
Right.
their indicators are very poor. I mean, in the businesses, they have less than 1% share in the pie. In government services or other representation, their representation is even 0.7%. So in other socio-economic indicators, they are...
While you're talking about this, let me ask you another very important aspect. You called it majoritarianism, but we understand that majority of the country is too diverse to actually come into one category. It seems that it is essentially elite casteism that might be minoritism that is actually wagging the dog. Don't you think that at this moment it is some kind of elite capture rather than majoritarianism what is going on in India?
We can say that, but you cannot deny the fact that BJP has got the overwhelming majority in the House. So what can you do? I mean, they can, what criteria are we going to apply? So they have got themselves elected.
As we move forward, sir, as we move forward, we are going to talk about that as well, the quality of India's democracy. Of course, democracy takes many things, not just a procedural democracy, that is electing or removing somebody through the electoral process. But let me bring in Syed Mohammad Ali Saab. Syed Mohammad Ali Saab, especially because you focus also on these movements that are going on. At this moment, the Indian elite and its media seem to have actually tried to frame the farmer, protest as some kind of minority or Sikh-led, protest, nothing else. But what do you think is actually happening? Because Indian government and Indian media try to discredit the entire movement as it is going on.
Well, there is an element because of the breadbasket of the Indian subcontinent, Haryana, Punjab. I mean, those are in terms of farming, very important areas, and there is a overlaying of that where the Sikh sort of this disgruntlement, which the Indian state had tried in the past 2 decades or so to sort of placate, is again sort of is getting fuel. So there is that element, but when it comes to the agrarian political economy in India since the 1990s, there has been pressure, subsequent to stagnation, and sort of starting to work with the World Bank in the early 1990s, an increasing liberalization of agriculture, right? Where one saw Monsanto, for instance, making a big entry into the Indian market, and the use of BT cotton these sort of, and with that is this idea that, it enhances yield, enhances profits, but what it also does is for the inputs for agriculture, like seed, right? Like traditionally, farmers used to use indigenous seed, which might not have been that productive. And since the 50s, this has been going on. Pakistan also went through the grain revolution. And we can argue the pros and cons of that, but essentially with the confluence of climate change, etc., I mean, farmer indebtedness in India has been a lingering problem since the late 1990s. With high indebtedness, where they've been purchasing these expensive seeds and then not being able to grow them in the manner that people thought that they would.
Right.
And now,
I get it that there are many reasons behind the farmer distress, and we are going to talk about that as well. But let me ask you about the quality of Indian democracy. We have seen something very interesting happening. I've just mentioned how media and social media are being handled by the Indian government, but regarding two other very important institutions, one the Parliament, we saw 3 laws back to back being crammed through it within 24 hours. First, the Article 370 and 35A amendment bill. Then CAA also, at the stroke of midnight, it was passed in a very moronic way. And then farmer laws. They were also crammed without any debate. On the other side, India's Supreme Court, that is supposed to be the apex body that was supposed to take care of these matters and listen to the people's distress, they seem to actually keep on rejecting pleas to actually listen to these matters. Do you think that India still can be called a democracy when it comes to the quality of institutions?
Well, democracy is a slippery slope. I mean, from the days of Greece, right? I mean, whose democracy? Who can vote? So, I mean, over time, and I mean, one sees the power of the lobbies, etc. I mean, even in the U.S. I mean, I do still feel that, it's a numbers game, and I mean, other scholars have been writing about this, right? So, I mean, rather than describing Modi's government as a fascist regime, it's a majoritarian government. And in fact, recently, something that you flagged earlier, Christopher Raffaello, the French scholar who writes on South Asia, has also pointed out that there has been an elite capture within the Indian state, where, in the Congress, for all its faults, particularly in the 90s, there was a lot of proactive legislation with the outward and the OBCs, the backward classes. And subsequently, under the guise of the market mechanism, right, there's been a pushback, and Modi, someone like a T-Sada's son, comes in as the champion on one level with Hindutva, the idea of leveling the playing field, but, I mean, certainly his economic model has exacerbated inequality. So,
and that's a good point, sir. Regarding the tea seller's son, amazingly, he keeps on saying that he used to sell tea at a platform, a railway station. That was not built until he had grown up. So I don't know how true is that story either. We haven't seen any pictures. But Dr. Saab Malik, we recently saw a very interesting thing that was happening. Arnab Goswami, a media anchor, his WhatsApp chats actually leaked through a court. And in that, you can see that they are actually guilty of manipulating the dating system. And until then, everybody was thinking that Indian people actually liked this kind of anger on screen, right? Later it was proven that it was manipulation. India's elections also took place. And there too we saw some very unique kind of ideas. Electoral bonds that had no limit. And you never needed to disclose who was funding you from internationally and locally as well. Do you think there's a possibility that the election that we keep on relying on, and we keep on saying that it actually shows India's democracy is still functioning, at least procedurally, that also might be compromised?
Basically, the things now, the way these have been projected and things have been unveiled, the track record says that whatever happened in the past, then the replica of the same may appear in the time to come. So, standing and the sanctity of their institution is at stake at the moment. And that is why India is quite conscious, and that is why Modi is quite perturbed about its image, not at home but abroad as well. This is not only this case, even this information lab, disinformation lab which we heard a couple of weeks ago, then a serious probe is going on across the world that how they have been manipulating the things, not domestically but externally as well. So we cannot believe that the standing of their democratic institution, whether it is maintained or not. So
and here's a test, common sense test. I mean, right now the farmers are distressed and they're protesting. We know that between 1995 and 2015, some 300,000 people have committed suicide. 12,000 people commit suicide every year because of the farmer distress. It was supposed to show in the 2019 elections, but it did not show anywhere. And people kept on voting for Modi and his, jingoism rather than their own economic interest. Does it not actually show you that perhaps the election was stolen? In another example, election commissioner. 3 people were there, 1 person was dissenting, and they made an example of that man. So
that is why everything, whether this is a political institution, whether there's all the pillars of state, whether the executive, judiciary or legislature, when we talk about these institutions and the laws which have been formulated, these are not reflecting the democratic norms. That is why we say that, especially whatever is in the foreseeable future, we can make the forecasting of what has been happened in the past. Especially you are talking about the farmers. Basically, what Modi is doing, Modi is basically looking after the interest of the capitalist class.
Right.
And that class is funding him, and that is creating an environment for him for his protection.
Again, are you talking about the entire capital class or actually Ambanis and Adanis?
Special, there's an orbit they are rotating in that, and they are not allowing anybody else to enter that orbit. So that is this is how they have created
Mukesh Ambani's fortunes have been rising, and from $30 billion, it has risen to $60 billion within a couple of years. And that actually shows you something very interesting. But now, Ambassador Saab, I'm going to bring the discussion to the international aspect as well. Recently, you must have noticed that U.S. President Joseph Biden actually called Narendra Modi, and while they kept on talking about the Quad and international setup, they also actually, the U.S. President actually mentioned that what holds India and America together is the democratic value, or the belief in the democratic values. Do you think that with whatever is going on, that contention actually holds true now?
Well, that's a big question mark now. Even after the 6th January episode in Capitol Hill, even in the American scholars, they are now debating about American democracy, even though you can take it with a pinch of salt. I mean, democracy in America is not under threat. But here, yes, United States and India, now they are strategic partners beyond shadow of doubt, and they are now, that's why they are now talking about strengthening Quad, and they'll have a ministerial meeting soon, and they are going to chalk out the strategies. Obviously, it would be against China. And Joe Biden administration, like Trump, while he was quite pronounced, Joe Biden administration is going to focus on China, but of course not in an aggressive manner. But they would, in fact, would be taking, and they have already declared China as an adversary. Of course, not in so many words. they think that China, unless there's a rivalry with China, that they cannot hold the things together in the United States, which the scene has been strengthened ever since Obama's presidency, and then the situation got further deteriorated during President Trump's tenure. So both India and United States, they, despite all those faults which we talk about, they mutually it's a mutual praise. They want to make believe that they are democratic orders and they have to save whatever they have got. So yes, they can do that. We can raise objections, but the problem is that they control the media.
Ambassador, since you brought up January 6th, the story is that there was an attempt at U.S. democracy, but the U.S. democracy actually survived and asserted itself. In India, it seems that the attack on democracy started in 2014, and somehow the institutions could not actually survive. Do you think that the U.S. still has some method of influence over the Indian policies and somehow can nudge the Modi government in the democratic direction right now?
I don't think so, because Indians, mostly in their history, if the history is a guide, they have been, in fact, pleading for autonomy. So strategic autonomy would be the hallmark of Indian policy making, and they are not going to, put all their eggs in the American basket.
Okay. So India is not going to put all the eggs in the American basket, but America is going to put all the eggs in the Indian basket. Is it what I'm hearing, sir?
No, not necessarily.
Okay. Right.
But I think Americans would see that where.
Please go ahead, sir. Finish that thought.
Americans would also look at their interests. Yes, for them, in order to preempt China, so India will be propped up, and the Indians will be propped up in their defense acquisitions. Of course, at the political level, India will receive the support. Americans have already announced their support to the Indian candidature for the permanent seat in the UN Security Council. So these are not small, gestures done by the United States. And India is going to reciprocate in a sense that wherever there would be the human rights violations, America has committed so many human rights violations. So Indians would look the other way. Same is the case in the Human Rights Council. They will be supporting each other. They have been supporting. Yes.
Right. That's a good point, sir. Sayyid Mohammed Ali Sahab, we have seen some very interesting things happening coming from India. First, of course, the Disinfo Lab actually did this expose on how Indian fake institutions and fake NGOs kept on manipulating facts and kept on peddling propaganda. Then we also saw the FinCEN report, in which various Indian banks were flagged by the FinCEN organization, and it was essentially black money that was being sent abroad, and that might have actually led to some kind of sponsorship of terrorism as well. And finally, there is Pakistan's dossier that Pakistan has presented to all countries and the UN as well. That actually shows the evidence of how India is sponsoring terrorism in Pakistan and might be doing it elsewhere as well. Do you think that there is still a way for the US or any other government to influence India to make sure that this doesn't happen any longer?
Well, the overriding imperative is still going to be China's containment. I mean, if we start looking at sort of Anthony Blinken's statements, President Biden, so that that's not something that with the end of the Trump administration, those adversarial sort of strategic competition imperatives have gone away. So there is this need for India, right? I mean, nations operate on the basis of self-interest. And, yet at the same time, the Biden administration, because of its rhetoric, will not be that oblivious when it comes to human rights. But while, there are human rights concerns with India, we also have to not forget that they are, equally, so I mean, all the issues that I said earlier about elite capture, about the state of farmers and depeasantization and rural poverty, all those issues, unfortunately, are also issues for Pakistan. And it's important now, right? I mean, there's international concern regarding sort of, press freedom, etc., concerning Pakistan. So Pakistan, I think it's been doing some encouraging things, right? I mean, where it's trying to highlight.
Mohammad Ali Sahab, I understand, and you and I both believe in democratic institutions and the democratic values. Surely, if a country is actually, actually leapfrogging in the democratic direction, 10 years ago the country didn't, 12 years ago the country didn't have democracy. We had an authoritarian government, and since then a lot has progressed, right? We are moving in the right direction. At least this is what the world believes. And a government like India that has been actually, that inherited democracy, 73 years old democracy, and that is regressing. Should there be no alarm there? Must we compare the two?
I think that we do need to, because we cannot, the world does not look at us in the same way that we look at ourselves. It's not to say that there aren't problems, right? And we should call out those problems. So, for instance,
let us call them out, sir. Can you name how many Pakistani journalists are behind the bars? Because I can name at least a dozen that are in India.
I mean, to finish my thought on religious freedom, for instance, right? I mean, all I'm saying is that, we need to have a more comprehensive view of these issues.
Right.
I mean,
again, let us call that out as well. Every time there's an attack on minorities, and I'm not saying there is none in Pakistan, my Prime Minister, my Army Chief, my institution, my Supreme Court all speak out. The media actually showcases that and actually calls people out. In India, that keeps on happening. Now the news stories are disappearing from the media. Indian Modi hardly ever actually condemns them. Indian Supreme Court never takes suo moto. And, of course, the other institutions are oblivious to that.
So, Pitafi Sahab, if you'd let me finish my thought, what I was saying was that is the problem, right? So, Pompeo, in the last couple of weeks of the Trump administration, the State Department declares countries of particular concern, and Pakistan has been there, since a while. This year, and this is a U.S. government body, that Commission on International Religious Freedom, it had said that India should also be a country of particular concern, and then the State Department is supposed to validate that, right? Which it refused to do. So, there is an issue, and probably on human rights, I feel that India will feel more heat, right? I mean, there's been arguments made in Brussels, for instance, with EU Disinformation Lab, that, with their expose last year, no sanctions had taken effect. Now, those are the issues that Pakistan can follow up on, but if Pakistan fights fire with fire, right, and also comes up with its own versions of Goswami and trying to use fifth generation warfare, that's a problem. That's
right. But amazingly, Dr. Saab Malik, when you talk about Pakistani media, I mean, we also have very aggressive anchors. I'm not saying we don't. But I haven't seen any Pakistani anchor who actually relies so much on India bashing as Goswami would, or most of their anchors would. Is it fair to compare the two countries? One country that is trying to actually get its balance back, the country that is actually learning to be democratic like Pakistan, and a country which had it all. Great economy, great opportunity, humongous population, international alliances, great diplomacy, and then democracy as well, and now it is regressing.
Yes, despite all the attributes which you have mentioned,
Yeah.
these all are then multiplied by zero because they are studying to look at the body language of the Indian anchor person. They are always in a mood of jingoism,
Shouting.
fight, shouting, and I'm really amazed. There is a decorum for the
And-
anchor persons as well.
And sorry to cut you, but let me remind you, they still think that they downed an F-16 back in 2019, despite the fact that even Lockheed Martin and others actually clarified that they didn't.
This is what is the fallacy of might.
Okay.
So, comparison, I think we should not compare our media with them, our anchor person with them. Let's compare our media, some civilized people who believe in peace,
Right.
stability, prosperity, friendly relation, those believe in people-to-people contact, connectivity. So all these notions are no more in our neighboring country. So we should not compare our media with their media. So these are totally two different media with different faces, with different manifestos, with different messages,
Right.
with different visions.
All right. In coming days, very quickly, I'm told that we are left with 3-4 minutes. Let me ask you to actually conclude for us. Do you see any autocorrect mechanism in India? Something that can bring about the change which is good and stops this proto-fascist tendency in India?
Unfortunately, here pessimism is prevailing. I don't think that such thing will prevail because the way Modi has turned their society, their country, their people, one point agenda that is against Pakistan, which was again emanated through vision through Hindutva. So I don't expect such like things even in the near future because these things have been deep-rooted in the Indian society, the hatred
Right.
against the neighbors, especially the Muslims and the Pakistan.
Right, absolutely. Let me ask Ambassador Asif Dutani to conclude also the same question, sir. Do you see any hope in coming days in India?
I think India is likely to face many challenges, and I think those are really serious. And whether there will be an improvement, still jury is out, because the way they are moving does not augur well for the Indian democracy, and definitely it's a challenge. Yes.
Right. Let me ask Syed Muhammad Ali Saab, your conclusion, sir.
Well, I mean, it's been disappointing that the Indian media is problematic because they are so the purse strings with advertisement, etc. The Indian government does have a lot of sway over the media. But when it comes to the judiciary, it's been a bit disappointing because there could have been attempts to challenge the revocation where, and there have been internal movements in terms of appointments, etc., that explain this. Right, so I mean, there is a possibility now within Kashmir there is more sort of political alignment, right, to at least challenge the revocation, which is kind of good news. The Atlantic Council just today had a piece on this. So otherwise, I mean, if there isn't an autocorrect, I mean, where does it go?
Right. I'm just told that we have to conclude the program here. Syed Muhammad Ali Saab, thank you very much, sir, for your precious time. Ambassador Asif Dutani, always great having you in the show, sir. Same goes for you, Dr. Saif Malik, sir. Thank you very much for being part of the program. Yes, you have listened to our participants. You have seen some evidence at the start of the program as well. Let me be very clear. Don't make mistake of thinking that there is some kind of both sidism